Okay, so are you ready to dive into the 5 a.m. club with me today? We're going to be like those characters in the book, the entrepreneur and the artist, except our eccentric billionaire mentor is Robin Sharma himself through this book.
And he really throws us right into the action, doesn't he? I mean,
Yeah.
right from the first page, you're swept up in this whirlwind mentorship with helicopter rides to the Taj Mahal and secret meetings in the catacombs of Rome.
Talk about an unconventional classroom, right? But that's Sharma for you, always keeping things interesting. But you know me, I'm all about practicality. So our mission today is to extract those golden nuggets of wisdom that we can actually apply to our own lives, even if we're not quite ready to join that 5 a.m. club just yet.
And that's what I appreciate about Sharma's approach. He doesn't just preach about waking up early. He breaks down the why behind it, like this whole concept of transient hypofrontality. Have you heard of this?
I have. It's like he's saying there's this magical window of creativity that we can tap into before the rest of the world wakes up.
Exactly. And while the science behind it might sound a little complex, it basically boils down to this idea that our brains are wired for peak performance in those early hours.
So ditching the snooze button could actually be the key to unlocking our creative potential.
Potentially.
Mhm.
But even beyond creativity, Sharma argues that the 5 a.m. hour allows us to structure our entire day for success. And that's where his famous 20-20-20 formula comes in.
Right. That seemed to be a recurring theme throughout the book. So remind us, what are those 3 20-minute blocks all about?
So imagine this. The first 20 minutes are dedicated to intense movement. Think a brisk walk, a quick workout, anything to get your heart rate up and those endorphins flowing.
So we're talking about kickstarting our day with a burst of energy.
Exactly. And Sharma actually links this to a surge in dopamine and serotonin, which basically puts your brain in this reward state first thing in the morning.
Okay, so no more hitting the snooze button. We're swapping that for a quick jog or maybe some yoga.
Preferably. Now, the second 20 minutes are all about reflection and journaling. Imagine yourself finding a quiet corner with your favorite notebook, sipping your coffee, and just taking some time to center yourself before the day's chaos hits.
Something I think we could all benefit from. Okay, so we've moved our bodies, we've centered our minds. What's next?
The final 20 minutes are all about feeding your mind. Imagine starting your day with an inspiring biography or catching up on an industry podcast. It's about intentional learning something to elevate and inspire you.
You know, I went into this thinking 5 a.m., that's easy for a billionaire to say. But what I'm realizing is that it's not really about the time itself, it's about the system, right?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about designing your ideal morning routine. And that's where Sharma's concept of the habit installation process comes into play. It's not just about willpower. He provides a framework for making those new behaviors stick.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give us a sneak peek into this framework. What's the secret sauce?
Well, he calls it the habit installation process. And it's broken down into 4 distinct phases: disruption, installation, elimination, and celebration. Imagine completely shaking up your routine. That's the disruption phase. Then you consciously implement that new behavior. That's installation.
So you're saying it's not enough to just have a plan. You've got to actively put it into practice. But what about those old habits that die hard? How do we get rid of those?
That's where elimination comes in.
Yeah.
It's about identifying those roadblocks and consciously choosing to avoid those old patterns. And then finally, and this is my favorite part, celebration. It's about rewarding yourself for the progress you've made.
I like where this is going. Celebrating those small wins can be a game changer. And speaking of game changers, this whole idea of the automaticity point, that moment when a new habit becomes almost effortless, really stood out to me.
It's a powerful concept, right? Imagine reaching that point where the positive behavior is so ingrained that it requires minimal willpower. And as Sharma argues, this frees up your mental energy to tackle even bigger goals.
Like leveling up your productivity game. So it's not just about waking up at 5 a.m. It's about using that time strategically to create this ripple effect throughout your entire day.
Precisely. And speaking of strategic, let's unpack how Sharma emphasizes going beyond just productivity with his concept of the 4 interior empires.
Right. Those were hard to miss. We briefly touched on mindset, heart set, health set, and soul set. It's like he's saying, hey, if you want to win at life, you got to train your mind, body, and spirit.
Exactly. And this concept really comes to life through the characters' journeys. We see the entrepreneur initially driven solely by success, struggling with burnout and self-doubt. But through her experiences with the billionaire, she begins to see the value in cultivating all 4 empires.
It's like she's trading that hustle at all costs mentality for a more balanced and sustainable approach to success, which honestly is something I think a lot of us can relate to these days. But I'm curious, How does the artist, with his free-spirited nature, fit into this whole 5 a.m. club philosophy?
That's where the heart set piece comes in. You see, even though he's this artistic type, he understands the importance of connection and vulnerability. And he challenges the entrepreneur to tap into those aspects of herself, showing her that true fulfillment isn't just about achievements, it's about nurturing those meaningful relationships.
It's like she's learning to bring back the joy and playfulness that's been missing in her life amidst all those high-stakes business deals. And that leads us perfectly to those intriguing details you mentioned earlier. I mean, who else conducts life lessons in the catacombs of Rome or while riding a helicopter over the Taj Mahal?
Right. It's classic Sharma taking these profound ideas and packaging them within these incredible experiences. But there's a method to his madness. Remember that sweating the small stuff idea he talks about? He relates it to those Formula One pit crews.
Ah, yes. The importance of granularity over superficiality. That analogy really stuck with me.
He describes how even a single speck of dust in the engine could cost the team the entire race. It's this powerful reminder that sometimes those minute details can make all the difference. It's about shifting our perspective from just checking things off the list to approaching each task with care and precision.
It's like that old saying, the devil's in the details. Except in this case, it's not about the devil. It's about striving for excellence, for mastery in whatever we do. And I think that message resonates even more when you consider the example of the London cab drivers.
Right. Imagine having to memorize the entire city map of London. Every street, every landmark, the whole shebang.
Right.
Sharma uses this example to highlight the incredible plasticity of our brains. Because research shows that these cabbies, through their rigorous training, actually increase the size of their hippocampus. That's the area of the brain responsible for memory.
Hold on. A brain workout that actually makes your brain bigger.
Hmm.
That's incredible. It's like he's saying we're not limited by our current abilities, that we can rewire our brains for greater success and fulfillment.
And it's not just about memorizing maps. It's about constantly challenging ourselves, about seeking out new knowledge and experiences that push us beyond our comfort zones.
It's like our brains are capable of some serious growth if we just give them the right kind of challenge. And that actually reminds me of another concept Sharma talks about, the 66-day minimum. This time frame he claims it takes to really install a new habit. But knowing Sharma, he didn't just pull that number out of thin air, right?
Right. It's not some arbitrary number. He breaks this 66-day period into 3 distinct phases. And the first 22 days, he calls those the destruction phase.
So that's that initial push to disrupt your old patterns.
Exactly. It's like hitting the reset button on your routine, which can be a little uncomfortable at first, but it's necessary if you're serious about change.
No pain, no gain, right?
Right.
So we've disrupted the old. What happens next?
The next 22 days are all about installation. This is where you're consciously practicing that new behavior day after day. Even when it feels awkward or forced or just plain weird, Sharma actually compares it to laying down a new neural pathway in your brain, which I thought was interesting.
So you're literally rewiring your brain with each repetition, making that new behavior more automatic over time. But I imagine this is where things can get a little tricky for people.
Right. It's that messy middle we talked about earlier where it's so easy to just fall back into those old comfortable habits. Oh, absolutely. Sharma even acknowledges that. He actually calls it the dangerousness and chaos of the middle. It's like this treacherous terrain you have to navigate. But he emphasizes that it's a necessary part of the process because this is where the real growth happens.
It's like pushing through that resistance training for your willpower.
Exactly. And if you can push through those dips in motivation and reach those final 22 days, that's the integration phase.
Okay, so we've disrupted the old, we've installed the new, now it's time to make it stick. What does that look like?
That's where it really starts to become ingrained, like second nature. It requires less conscious effort. You start to experience the real benefits of all that hard work. That's what Sharma refers to as hitting the automaticity point.
Right, that beautiful moment when the new behavior becomes so ingrained that it requires minimal willpower. It's like you've leveled up in the game of life. But I'm curious, staying motivated for a full 66 days, it's no small feat. What advice does Sharma offer for overcoming those inevitable dips in motivation that we're all bound to face at some point?
Where he talks about this idea of connecting to your why, having a strong, compelling reason that really resonates with you. And he also suggests incorporating rewards along the way, celebrating those small wins to kind of reinforce that positive feedback loop.
It's like giving your brain a little dopamine boost every time you hit a milestone, right? To make the journey more enjoyable.
Exactly. And speaking of enjoyable, knowing Sharma, I'm guessing his idea of a reward is probably a little more extravagant than a pat on the back.
Oh, I'm sure. Let's hear it.
Well, remember when he whisks his mentees off on that impromptu trip to the Taj Mahal for a private concert as a reward for sticking to their 5 a.m. routine?
Right. Talk about an incentive. Okay, but for those of us who aren't billionaires, maybe it's something a little more down to earth, like enjoying that first cup of coffee after a 5 a.m. workout, or treating yourself to a weekend getaway after a month of consistently crushing your goals. It's all about finding those personal rewards that feel meaningful.
Exactly. And, beyond those personal rewards, Sharma really emphasizes the importance of social support as well. He talks about surrounding yourself with people who uplift you, who challenge you, and who inspire you to become your best self.
It's like finding your own personal board of advisors, but for your life.
Exactly. Because let's face it, change is hard. And having a supportive network can make all the difference. It's about creating that ecosystem of support, especially in a world that can often feel full of distractions and, negativity.
So true. And speaking of support and encouragement, there's another point Sharma makes that I found really intriguing. This idea of teaching what you learn.
Right. He's a big advocate for that. Remember how the billionaire mentor is always emphasizing the importance of sharing your knowledge?
It's like that old saying, the best way to learn is to teach. And it goes beyond just solidifying the knowledge in your own mind, right? It's about using it to make a positive impact on others, to empower them on their own journeys. But we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the 20-20-20 formula, the habit installation processes for interior empires, that 66-day minimum, even touched on those brain-boosting London cab drivers again.
And we can't forget about those extravagant rewards. But amidst all of these different strategies and concepts, there's one key takeaway that I think kind of ties it all together.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the common thread that connects all these seemingly disparate pieces of the puzzle?
It's the idea that achieving true lasting success isn't about this constant state of hustle and grind. It's about finding a sustainable rhythm, one that allows you to perform at your best while also prioritizing your well-being. And Sharma introduces this concept through his idea of the twin cycles of elite performance.
Twin cycles of elite performance.
Okay, that sounds kind of intense, but also super intriguing. Break it down for us. What's the core concept here? Twin cycles of elite performance.
Yeah.
So it's like he's saying there's this rhythm to success, right? Like it's not about being on all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Sharma actually uses this analogy of a high-performance athlete. They don't just train nonstop. They alternate between these periods of really intense effort and strategic recovery to optimize their performance.
So it's about finding that balance between pushing ourselves and giving ourselves permission to rest and recharge. Exactly. He breaks it down into these two cycles. The first one is the performance cycle. That's all about focused effort, deep work, really making headway on those big goals. That's like that 90-91 rule he talks about.
Oh, yeah, that one stuck with me. The idea of focusing on your most important task for 90 minutes twice a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Creating that tight bubble of total focus. It sounds intense, right?
Intense, but effective. Although even with that level of focus, we all need to hit pause at some point. Is that where the second cycle comes in?
Precisely. The recovery cycle is just as important as the performance phase. It's all about giving your mind and body a chance to recharge and prevent burnout.
So not just collapsing on the couch after a long day, but actively engaging in things that help us unwind and restore.
Exactly. And some of his suggestions are pretty interesting.
Oh my God.
Well, he talks about spending time in nature, for one. Nurturing your creative side through hobbies. And get this, even indulging in a massage or two. Remember the billionaire's 2 massage protocol.
Wait, 2 90-minute massages every single week? Sign me up. Although I'm not sure my bank account would be too happy about that.
He did have a certain flair for the dramatic, didn't he? But there's a really important point there. Recognizing that investing in your well-being isn't selfish. It's essential, whether it's a massage or just taking some quiet time for yourself.
It's true. Sometimes just disconnecting and recharging is exactly what you need to come back even stronger. So it sounds like this twin cycles concept isn't just about work-life balance. It's about creating this kind of rhythm in all aspects of our lives.
Absolutely. And it's about being intentional with our time and energy, right? Realizing that we can't operate at 100% all the time. We need to build in those moments of rest and recovery to truly thrive. And I think that's such an important message, especially in today's fast-paced, always-on world. It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget to hit pause. But as we've seen from diving into the 5 a.m. Club, real sustainable success requires a more holistic approach. We need to take care of our minds, our bodies, and our spirits if we want to achieve our full potential. So if there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from this deep dive, it's the importance of finding what works for them. Maybe it's the 20-20-20 formula, maybe it's incorporating the 66-day minimum, or maybe it's just making time for that walk in nature. The key is to experiment and find what helps you feel your best. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? Designing a life that lights us up from the inside out.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for taking this deep dive with me. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep reaching for those extraordinary goals.